Dearest listeners, how intriguing that the most profound connections often form in the quietest hours, when pretense falls away like autumn leaves. Today, this author brings you the most deliciously scandalous tale of redemption, kindled by candlelight, of two souls who sought solitude but found instead an unexpected awakening. But let us not rush, for the best scandals, like the finest poetry, must be savored verse by verse. London, 1819. A season of particular ostentation in Mayfair, where chandeliers blazed and champagne flowed despite the economic hardships afflicting the rest of the nation. The ton buzzed with the usual preoccupations. Which debutante had secured the most eligible bachelor? Which matron had been caught gambling beyond her means? Which gentleman had fallen spectacularly from grace? And fallen spectacularly, the master of Beaumont House certainly had. 3 years prior, society had witnessed the most delicious scandal to grace its drawing rooms in a decade. This author has it on good authority that the handsome heir to the Beaumont title had been discovered in a most compromising position with the Marchioness of Hartley, a lady whose husband's influence extended to the highest echelons of government. The scandal had been exquisite in its timing, mere weeks before the young aristocrat's wedding to the season's incomparable Lady Caroline Mercer. One must confess, this author had always held a particular fascination for men who defied convention, though perhaps not quite so spectacularly. Neither fully ostracized nor truly accepted, the gentleman in question occupied that most interesting of social territories, feared by mothers of marriageable daughters, envied by restrained husbands, and the subject of furtive speculation among bored society wives. The current titled gentleman, for his father had succumbed to a fatal apoplexy shortly after the scandal, some say, from the shame of it, now moved through London like a shadow. Tall, dark, and possessed of a cynical wit that cut like the finest Toledo steel, the nobleman had withdrawn almost entirely from society. This author observed the rare occasions when necessity forced his appearance at select gatherings, the particular stillness that fell over a room upon his entrance, the deliberate space that formed around him despite the crush, the way dowagers clutched their granddaughters closer as if reputation might be contagious. In a modest townhouse in Bloomsbury, another soul prepared for an unexpected change in circumstance. The spinster daughter of a respected scholar reviewed the letter offering her a position organizing the extensive library at Beaumont House, her practical nature warring with a secret thrill at the prospect of access to one of London's finest private collections. Would you believe, dearest listeners, that despite being firmly on the shelf at 26, this young woman possessed a particular light that society's narrow gaze had somehow missed? The singular intelligence that animated her unremarkable features when discussing literature, the quiet humor that occasionally curved her lips when observing social absurdities, the exceptional penmanship that revealed both discipline and artistic sensibility, all suggested depths unplumbed by the marriage-minded society that had long since dismissed her. This author observed the young lady during her father's academic gathering last Thursday, her spine straight as propriety demanded, her eyes revealing nothing as pompous scholars debated points of classical translation while ignoring her occasional subtle corrections. One could only admire such composure. What the academic gentleman did not know, but this author did, was that beneath her serene exterior, this bookish spinster harbored a carefully guarded passion for romantic literature that would have scandalized her father's colleagues. The modest shelf behind her writing desk contained not only the expected works of serious scholarship, but also, hidden behind false bindings, the most delicious novels of sensibility, and even, one blushes to mention, poetry of a distinctly passionate nature. Two souls, each with secrets they believed well concealed, each with wounds inflicted by a society that demanded particular performances while punishing any deviation. How fortunate that your humble chronicler possesses the particular ability to see beyond carefully constructed facades. The library at Beaumont House, a magnificent 2-story chamber that would have made even the most esteemed bibliophile weep with envy. This author watched with particular interest as the noble gentleman paced the Turkish carpet, his agitation evident in the tense set of broad shoulders beneath exquisitely tailored superfine wool. Gentle listeners, steel yourselves for what transpired next, for even this author, who has witnessed countless first meetings, found herself holding her breath. The spinster entered the library with the particular quiet assurance of one who feels more at home among books than in drawing rooms. This author noticed how the afternoon light from the tall windows caught the unexpected auburn highlights in her simply arranged brown hair, a feature that might have been considered striking had anyone bothered to look closely enough. More significantly, this author observed the nobleman's reaction. Not the appreciative male assessment one might expect, but something far more intriguing, a flicker of wariness, as if sensing a potential disruption to his carefully ordered isolation. What the aristocrat saw was not merely a suitably qualified librarian, though with her exceptional knowledge of cataloging systems, ancient languages, and literary history, the young woman certainly qualified, but a disquieting embodiment of unaffected intelligence draped in modest gray wool. A woman whose direct gaze and practical manner suggested someone immune to both his charm and his notoriety. Or so one might perceive, if one had spent 3 years cultivating indifference as a shield against society's judgment. This author watched with fascination as the master of the house struggled to maintain his customary sardonic detachment during the interview. His questions delivered with the particular drawl that suggested boredom, while his eyes remained unnervingly attentive. The spinster, in turn, answered with perfect composure, though this author noted the slight tremor in her gloved hands as she examined a particularly rare volume he handed her as a test of her knowledge. The conversation proceeded with perfect propriety. The nobleman had always excelled at surface charm when it suited him, but this author noted how their gazes seemed to meet with a particular directness unusual between employer and prospective employee. Neither smiled unnecessarily. Both maintained careful professional distance. And yet, gentle listeners, there was something else, an undercurrent of mutual recognition perhaps, the particular connection that forms between two souls who understand what it means to live behind carefully constructed personas. The interview concluded with the aristocrat's somewhat unexpected offer of generous terms, delivered with the particular inflection that suggested he had intended greater negotiation, but found himself unwilling to risk her refusal. The spinster accepted with a slight inclination of her head, her quiet thanks carrying that particular quality of dignity that acknowledges an opportunity without fawning gratitude. As the new librarian was shown to the small but elegantly appointed office adjoining the library, this author observed the master watching her departure with an expression of perplexed irritation, as if he had inadvertently acquired not merely an employee, but a puzzle his cynical mind could not immediately solve. In the weeks that followed, this author observed the most fascinating pattern emerge at Beaumont House. The titled gentleman, who had previously treated his ancestral library with benign neglect, suddenly developed a keen interest in its reorganization. The spinster, accustomed to working in solitude at the British Museum's reading room, found her carefully planned cataloging system subjected to increasingly frequent chance inspections by her employer. More curious still was how these encounters began to shift to the evening hours. The genesis of their midnight ritual occurred most unexpectedly, on a particularly bitter January night. This author has it on excellent authority that the master of the house, plagued by his usual insomnia, descended to the library well past midnight, seeking solace in brandy rather than books. Upon entering his sanctuary, the nobleman found himself confronted with an unexpected intrusion. The librarian, still at her desk, surrounded by stacks of ancient folios. The aristocrat's expression, this author was informed by a particularly observant footman who had been stoking the fires, transformed from surprise to evident irritation. His sardonic inquiry as to whether the young woman had perhaps confused day with night carried the particular edge that had caused more than one servant to seek employment elsewhere. What happened next altered the course of their acquaintance entirely. The spinster, rather than offering flustered apologies, merely glanced up from her work with the particular clarity of gaze that comes from deep intellectual absorption. Her quiet observation that Don's poetry, The volume currently open before her was perhaps best appreciated in the same dark hours that had inspired it, contained no impertinence, yet carried a scholarly confidence that momentarily silenced the master. The nobleman, clearly prepared for timidity rather than literary insight, found himself drawn against his will to examine the text in question. Minutes stretched into a quarter hour as employer and employee fell into unexpected discussion of Dawn's metaphysical conceits. The aristocrat's extensive classical education and the spinster's remarkable literary memory proved so evenly matched that both appeared to forget momentarily the impropriety of their midnight conversation. When the household clock chimed 2, the spell broke, with the master retreating hastily to his apartments. Yet the following night found him again in the library at a similarly inappropriate hour, ostensibly seeking a particular volume, but lingering to inquire about the progress of cataloging a collection of Renaissance manuscripts. Thus began an unspoken arrangement. The official workday would end at a reasonable hour, but those who found themselves wakeful in the small hours were permitted, nay, encouraged, to continue their respective pursuits in the library's sanctuary. One must confess a certain admiration for the artfulness of this arrangement. For what could be more proper than an employer and employee working in the same grand space, separated by towering shelves, absorbed in their respective tasks? And what could be more intimate than the particular hushed quality of conversation that emerges in the midnight hours when the rest of the household slumbers and social masks begin to slip? Mrs. Patterson, the housekeeper, remarked upon the peculiar schedule to this author during a chance encounter at the Modiste, her voice carrying that particular inflection that indicated both concern and reluctant approval. This author watched the good woman's expression soften as she described finding the library in disarray one morning, teacups and a decanter of brandy on a side table, books spread across every surface, and the master asleep in his chair with a volume of Byron open on his lap. "The first peaceful sleep he's had in years," the housekeeper had whispered, with the particular loyalty of long service. What fascinated this author most was the transformation that occurred in both parties during these midnight sessions. The aristocrat, so carefully cynical in daylight hours, would gradually display a scholarly enthusiasm that bordered on boyish excitement when discussing a particularly rare text or historical curiosity. The spinster, normally the epitome of practical efficiency, would occasionally reveal glimpses of a romantic sensibility at odds with her spinsterish reputation, an appreciation for poetic imagery, a tendency to become lost in historical narratives of passion and sacrifice. The most telling evidence of their evolving connection emerged through the curious medium of marginalia. This author has it on excellent authority that the nobleman's personal collection included numerous volumes with his own acerbic notations. As the cataloging progressed, a peculiar correspondence developed, the librarian's neat annotations appearing alongside the master's, sometimes questioning his interpretations, other times expanding upon them. This literary conversation, conducted through the intermediary of treasured texts, allowed for exchanges of perspective far more intimate than their verbal interactions. This author, who had occasion to examine one such volume, a rare edition of Paradise Lost, with particularly provocative comments from both parties regarding the nature of temptation, noted the particular energy that characterized these written exchanges. The nobleman's handwriting growing less controlled, more expansive when responding to the librarian's insights. The spinster's typically precise script, occasionally betraying emotion through a more emphatic stroke or deeper impression of the pen. The resistance to their growing connection manifested in curious ways. The master would abruptly cancel their evening sessions, only to return the following night with rare books discovered in his travels that precisely matched the librarian's scholarly interests. The spinster would maintain strict professional formality for days, only to inadvertently reveal her deepening regard by preparing the particular blend of tea the aristocrat preferred during their midnight discussions. By the third month of her employment, the library had been transformed. Not merely in its improved organization, though that certainly progressed with admirable efficiency, but in its atmosphere. What had been a neglected monument to family prestige became a living space marked by the particular signs of intellectual communion, paired reading chairs positioned near the fireplace, a chess set with an ongoing game perennially in play, specialized reference volumes placed strategically within reach of the master's favorite seat. The household staff, this author observed, developed a protective attitude toward these nocturnal meetings. Footmen were instructed to maintain the fire in the library grate regardless of the hour. The cook ensured that a light supper was always available for midnight refreshment. Even the formidable butler adjusted his rounds to include a discreet check on the library at regular intervals, ostensibly to ensure all was well, but perhaps also to satisfy his own curiosity about this most unusual household arrangement. The resistance continued despite these domestically sanctioned opportunities for connection, of course. At the few social gatherings the nobleman could not avoid, they maintained a careful distance. During the occasional visits from the master's acquaintances, the librarian made herself scarce, retreating behind the particular invisibility that society accords unmarried women of a certain age. But this author, who has observed human nature through many a season, recognized the particular quality of their performance. They resisted not merely each other, but their growing awareness that in each other's company, the weight of their respective social burdens seemed somehow lighter. The true turning point, dearest listeners, came not during one of their scholarly midnight discussions, but in the unexpected intimacy of a shared crisis. This author, who occasionally finds herself in the right place at precisely the right moment, happened upon the most remarkable scene at Beaumont House during a particularly violent spring storm. The titled gentleman, returning late from his club, entered the library to find his librarian atop a precariously balanced ladder, attempting to secure a section of the ceiling where rainwater had begun to seep through. This author observed with particular interest as the nobleman's expression transformed from surprise to alarm, to something approaching admiration at the spinster's practical response to the emergency. Without a moment's hesitation, the aristocrat shed his elegant evening coat and joined the effort to protect his precious volumes. This author, who had sought shelter from the downpour in the Beaumont House vestibule, a fortunate coincidence that certain cynics might question, though your humble chronicler assures you it was mere happenstance, observed through the partially open library door as employer and employee worked side by side with unprecedented physical proximity. Books were rapidly relocated from the endangered shelves, valuable manuscripts wrapped in protective oilcloth, and furniture rearranged to catch the persistent drips. This author noted with particular fascination how their customary awkwardness dissolved in the face of practical necessity. The master handing volumes to the librarian without the careful avoidance of physical contact that had previously characterized their interactions, the spinster issuing practical directions that the nobleman followed without his usual sardonic commentary. As the immediate crisis abated, both stood amid the chaos of displaced books, breathless and disheveled from their efforts. This author, concealed behind a convenient drapery, having been graciously admitted to the front hall by a distracted footman, observed a profound shift in their dynamic. With social masks literally dampened by their exertions, the aristocrat's usually immaculate cravat askew, the librarian's neat coiffure coming undone in tendrils around her flushed face, they regarded each other with the particular clarity that sometimes emerges in moments of shared purpose. It was the nobleman who broke the silence, his voice lacking its usual defensive drawl as he expressed not merely gratitude for the librarian's quick thinking, but a deeper appreciation for her evident care for his ancestral collection. This author observed the spinster's reaction closely, the momentary widening of eyes, the particular quality of vulnerability that flashed across features usually composed in scholarly concentration. Her response when it came carried neither the deference of an employee nor the practiced modesty of a spinster acknowledging praise. She spoke instead with the particular directness of one who has glimpsed behind social facades, noting that perhaps the master's reputation for careless disregard of his heritage had been greatly exaggerated, a gentle challenge to the public persona he had cultivated since his disgrace. Oh, gentle listeners, this author nearly gasped aloud at the transformation in the nobleman's expression. To witness the momentary fall of cynicism from features so long arranged in sardonic amusement, how terribly revealing and terribly significant. The aristocrat's quiet acknowledgement that certain reputations, once established, become almost impossible to shed, revealed more of his private suffering than perhaps he intended. The librarian's response that reputations, like books, benefit from careful recataloguing rather than hasty judgment struck a chord so profound that this author observed the gentleman physically step back, as if the force of understanding had actual weight. They stood in silence amid the disordered library, the storm still raging beyond the windows, but somehow diminished in significance compared to the internal tempests visibly playing across the nobleman's features. This author observed how they had unconsciously positioned themselves in physical alignment, both facing the rain-lashed windows rather than each other, as if the direct contemplation of their shifting connection might prove too overwhelming. What happened next, dearest listeners, might seem inconsequential to those who measure intimacy only in physical terms. As they finally moved to restore order to the library, the master reached for a particular volume, a rare edition of Dante's Inferno with illuminated pages, at precisely the same moment as the librarian. Their hands met, not in the accidental brush of fingers that romance might dictate, but in the firm clasp of shared purpose, both instinctively moving to protect the same treasured work from water damage. Neither immediately withdrew, the momentary connection extending just beyond what necessity required, their gazes meeting over the rescued volume with the particular intensity that comes when minds accustomed to solitude recognize a kindred intelligence. This author, who prides herself on discerning the significance of such moments, recognized it for what it was. Not a conventional attraction based on physical beauty or social advantage, but something far rarer, the recognition between two souls who have found in each other an unexpected sanctuary from the particular loneliness of living behind society's expectations. They separated naturally, returning to the practical task of restoration with newfound awareness humming between them. But this author knew, as surely as she knows the difference between a genuine first edition and a clever forgery, that everything had changed. If this author believed the path to understanding would proceed smoothly from that point, she was soon reminded of the particular talent society has for complicating matters of the heart. 3 weeks after the storm incident, during preparations for a small but necessary dinner party to honor the nobleman's elderly aunt, disaster struck in the form of an unexpected visitor, a lady whose reputation rivaled even the master's for scandal. This author watched with growing dismay as the Marchioness of Hartley arrived unannounced, her elegant carriage drawing up to Beaumont House with the particular ostentation that suggests a visitor more interested in being observed than in discretion. Her remark to the butler that she had urgent personal business with the master came with that unmistakable inflection that suggests intimate history. This author observed the librarian's face closely from her vantage point near the conservatory, where she had been admiring the particularly fine orchid collection, having been invited to tea by the housekeeper. The brief flash of recognition, followed by the particular stillness that suggests one is attempting to reconcile rumors with reality. The aristocrat, emerging from his study at the commotion, maintained his composure, though this author detected the slight tension in his jaw that suggested deeply controlled anger rather than the pleased surprise a former lover might expect. The Marchioness proceeded to make herself at home with the particular entitlement of the aristocracy, dismissing the librarian with a negligent wave as some sort of secretary when introduced. This author noted the spinster's dignified withdrawal, her expression betraying nothing, though her normally graceful movements had acquired a particular rigidity. What followed was revealed to this author through the particular network of household intelligence that servants maintain. The Marchioness, it seemed, had not come to rekindle a passionate liaison, but rather to request financial assistance, her husband having finally restricted her access to funds after years of extravagance. According to the particularly observant footman who served tea, the lady had suggested that the master's fond memories of their time together might incline him toward generosity. Gentle listeners, steel yourselves for what happened next. This author learned that the nobleman's categorical refusal had prompted the Marchioness to reveal her true purpose: blackmail. Apparently, she possessed certain letters written during their brief affair that, if made public, would reignite scandal and potentially damage the aristocrat's fragile reconciliation with his mother's family, from whom he expected a significant inheritance. The misunderstanding bloomed like a poisonous flower. To the librarian, glimpsing the Marchioness's triumphant exit from the study window, it appeared that the master had succumbed to either passion or coercion, that his apparent intellectual redemption had been merely another facet of a fundamentally flawed character. To those observing, including regrettably your humble chronicler, it seemed the natural conclusion. What the librarian did not witness, what this author would only discover later through her particular network of informants, was the nobleman's reaction after the Marchioness's departure. Rather than acquiescing to the blackmail, he had immediately summoned his solicitor to prepare for the legal and social consequences of refusing the Marchioness's demands. His preference for enduring renewed scandal rather than participating in dishonorable extortion revealed a moral core at odds with his cultivated reputation. In the days that followed, this author observed the most painful of domestic tensions. The librarian withdrew into formal perfection, fulfilling her duties with meticulous care but declining the midnight scholarly sessions that had become the household's open secret. The master, in turn, watched her retreat with increasing frustration, clearly baffled by the sudden change, yet unwilling to demand explanations that might reveal vulnerabilities on either side. This author observed the nobleman approach the library door late one evening, his hand raised as if to knock, only to let it fall again with an expression of such profound frustration that even this jaded chronicler felt a pang of sympathy. The requirements of his solicitor's discreet legal preparations, it seemed, warred visibly with the inclinations of his heart. After a moment's hesitation, he turned away, the set of his shoulders betraying the particular tension of a man caught between prudence and desire. The situation deteriorated further when the librarian, seeking escape from the emotional confusion of Beaumont House, accepted an invitation to accompany a former school friend to a musical. There, this author observed her pale face and distracted manner as she attempted to maintain polite conversation while clearly absorbed in private turmoil. When Lady Harrington deliberately seated herself beside the young woman and began a whispered account of fresh intelligence regarding the aristocrat's renewed liaison with the Marchioness, the spinster's uncharacteristically abrupt departure surprised even this seasoned observer of social interactions. The greatest tragedy, dearest listeners, was that their estrangement rested entirely on misunderstanding. This author later discovered that the master had actually engaged his solicitor in the complex process of legally proving the Marchioness's blackmail attempt, a process that required meticulous documentation and absolute discretion, explaining his distracted manner and temporary reticence even with his trusted librarian. As April gave way to May, this author observed the librarian's increasing pallor, the nobleman's growing restlessness. They had found in each other the possibility of intellectual and emotional communion, only to have it threatened by the very scandal that had originally driven the aristocrat into isolation. But I digress, for the course of true understanding, like that of true love, cannot be permanently diverted by mere misunderstanding. Not when minds have recognized their intellectual counterparts, however briefly. The turning point, dearest listeners, came at Lady Rothschild's literary salon, an event of such intellectual significance that even the spinster, despite her recent tendency to avoid society, felt obliged to attend in her scholarly capacity. The nobleman, though not generally inclined toward such gatherings, had been persuaded to lend a particularly valuable manuscript for display, necessitating his presence as well. The librarian arrived dressed with the particular restraint that scholarly women adopt for intellectual occasions, her gown of deep blue providing a modest but becoming contrast to the fashionable excesses displayed by the literary patronesses. The master, in contrast, stood out in his severe evening attire, his imposing height and striking features drawing appreciative glances despite his forbidding expression. This author positioned herself strategically near the refreshment table, anticipating developments with the particular thrill that comes when one senses the wheels of fate beginning to turn. The anticipation was not misplaced. The Marchioness of Hartley, apparently having received no satisfaction from her private blackmail attempt, approached with the confidence of a woman accustomed to controlling narratives rather than being controlled by them. This author, through means she shall not disclose, had learned of the Marchioness's intentions to publicly hint at renewed intimacy with the nobleman, thereby pressuring him toward acquiescence while simultaneously enhancing her own reputation for irresistibility. The Marchioness began with a tone of possessive familiarity, commenting loudly on how difficult it must be for the aristocrat to find intellectual stimulation in his reduced social circumstances, with a meaningful glance toward the librarian that suggested the young woman represented a particularly desperate attempt at companionship. This author observed the spinster's spine stiffen beneath her modest gown. The librarian had been seated at the edge of the gathering, examining the rare manuscript with professional interest, but the Marchioness's deliberately projected voice carried clearly to where she sat. Before the master could respond to this impertinence, the Marchioness continued, her gaze fixed maliciously on the librarian. Her suggestion that perhaps the spinster should not grow too comfortable in her position, as the nobleman's arrangements tended toward the temporary, hung in the air like a poisoned dart. This author held her breath, wondering if the librarian would maintain her usual dignified silence, or if the direct attack would prompt a different response. The answer came not in a dramatic confrontation, but in a quiet intervention that stunned the assembled literary society into rare silence. The spinster rose from her seat with the particular grace that comes from absolute certainty of purpose. Rather than addressing the Marchioness directly, she approached the manuscript display and began to speak, not of scandal or impropriety, but of the document itself. With scholarly precision and unexpected passion, she expounded upon the historical significance of the text, its place in literary tradition, and most pointedly, the character of the collector who had preserved it through centuries of potential neglect. Gentle listeners, the tableau that formed in that moment. The Marchioness's face flushed with frustrated rage at being so elegantly circumvented. The master's expression transformed from defensive tension to astonished admiration. And the assembled literary society, this author observed with particular interest, found themselves unwittingly educated on both medieval manuscripts and the true character of a man they had dismissed as merely scandalous. The librarian's scholarly discourse seamlessly incorporated observations that could only have come from intimate intellectual exchange with the master of Beaumont House. Her references to his meticulous restoration of damaged texts, his scholarly annotations on obscure historical points, and his financial support of several anonymous young authors painted a portrait utterly at odds with his public reputation as a cynical libertine. Without once directly addressing the Marchioness's insinuations, the spinster had effectively countered them through the simple expedient of revealing a truth more compelling than malicious gossip: the existence of a man of intellect and principle behind the mask of scandal. This author watched with particular delight as understanding dawned across the assembled guests, for the most influential minds of London's literary society had gathered, drawn by the manuscript, but now captivated by this unexpected glimpse into a private intellectual partnership. Whispers and meaningful glances rippled through the gathering, all eyes moving between the librarian's composed features and the nobleman's uncharacteristically unguarded expression. What happened next occurred with such unexpected grace that even this author, who prides herself on anticipating social drama, could scarcely credit it. The master crossed to where the librarian stood and, with deliberate care, took her hand in his. A public acknowledgement of connection that sent ripples of shock through the assembly. His statement that he was fortunate indeed to have found a librarian whose understanding of both books and human character exceeded anything he had previously encountered came with perfect clarity. The declaration delivered with such evident sincerity that even the most cynical observers, including, momentarily, your humble chronicler, found themselves moved. The Marchioness attempted one final thrust, withdrawing from her reticule a packet of letters tied with ribbon, her theatrical gesture clearly intended to remind the nobleman of her power to destroy his remaining social standing. The master's response came with quiet authority. His calm acknowledgement that youthful indiscretions, while regrettable, were less shameful than a mature woman's attempt to profit from them, silenced the room completely. His further remark that he would rather face honest consequences than dishonest salvation struck at the heart of the Marchioness's power, for blackmail succeeds only when shame exceeds courage. Gentle listeners, even this author, who has witnessed countless acts of both cowardice and courage, felt her heart swell at this declaration. For it was delivered not with the bravado of one who has nothing to lose, but with the quiet dignity of a man who has discovered something worth the risk of losing everything else. The Marchioness retreated in humiliation, her scheme to publicly pressure the nobleman thoroughly reversed. As the crowd dispersed into murmured speculation, this author observed the master escort his librarian toward the garden terrace, their expressions suggesting a conversation too meaningful for public witness. This author, respecting the rare sanctity of genuine private sentiment, while maintaining a discreet position near enough to observe general developments naturally, noted only that when they returned some quarter hour later, something fundamental had shifted between them. The librarian's face reflected a quiet joy that transformed her usually composed features. The nobleman moved with the particular ease of one who has finally set down a burden carried too long. This author, not normally moved to emotional display, found herself surprisingly affected by this tableau, for it represented not merely the triumph of truth over malice, but the particular courage required to defend another's honor when doing so reveals one's own heart in the process. The final act of our tale, dearest listeners, unfolded not in the grand ballrooms of Mayfair or the gossiping drawing rooms of society, but in the sanctuary that had witnessed their intellectual communion, the library of Beaumont House on a perfect summer evening. This author, invited to a small literary gathering as one of a very select group, observed with particular satisfaction as the master and his former librarian, now formally betrothed, welcomed their guests beneath the vaulted ceiling that had sheltered their midnight conversations. One must confess that even this author, who has chronicled countless unions of convenience and calculation, found herself quite moved by the evident devotion between the couple. They had chosen intellectual communion over social advantage, genuine understanding over fashionable connection, a choice that spoke volumes about their journey from formal distance to profound attachment. Dr. Johnson, the literary critic whose approval could make or destroy reputations, remarked upon the transformation of Beaumont House from a symbol of aristocratic scandal to a center of genuine literary patronage. This author, naturally, had anticipated this evolution, or at least hoped for it. For what is more satisfying than witnessing two souls find in each other not what society deemed appropriate, but what their intellectual hearts truly needed? The scandal that had threatened to destroy the nobleman's remaining social standing had, in the end, proved the catalyst for a most unexpected rehabilitation. His forthright confrontation of the Marchioness's blackmail attempt had evolved, in literary society's retelling, into a narrative of principled stand against manipulation. The discovery that the notorious master of Beaumont House had been anonymously supporting several promising but impoverished authors transformed his reputation from libertine to literary patron almost overnight. For London society might forgive moral lapses more readily than it acknowledged them, but it positively celebrated intellectual generosity when fashionably framed. Similarly, the spinster's public defense of the nobleman's character, initially viewed with skepticism by some as a mere employee's loyalty, had gradually transformed into a romantic narrative of intellectual equals finding rare understanding, a story far more compelling to the literary set than mere scandal could ever be. This author observed with particular pleasure how the couple moved among their guests with the easy synchronicity of minds long accustomed to each other's patterns. When the master referenced an obscure literary allusion, the former librarian completed it without thought. When she sought a particular volume to settle a scholarly debate, he retrieved it from the exact shelf without direction. These small moments of intellectual intimacy, more revealing than any physical demonstration, confirmed what this author had recognized from their first contentious meeting: the rare connection of minds that society so often overlooked in its preoccupation with more conventional matches. The most touching moment came not during the formal announcement of their betrothal, but in a quiet exchange this author observed near the chess table where their midnight games had often unfolded. The nobleman, momentarily separated from his guests, approached his future bride with a small Morocco-bound volume. This author, positioned with remarkable timing near a convenient bookshelf, observed the spinster's expression as she opened it to discover not a conventional lover's token, but a first edition of obscure poetry she had once mentioned admiring. Her response, the particular luminosity that transformed her scholarly features from merely pleasant to genuinely beautiful, spoke more eloquently than conventional romantic effusions. The master's answering smile, entirely free of the cynicism that had been his social armor for so long, confirmed what this author had suspected, that their connection, founded on intellectual recognition and strengthened through literary communion, had evolved into something far deeper than society's shallow understanding of attraction could encompass. As the evening progressed, this author observed the subtle shifting of social perception in real time. The influential hostesses who had initially accepted invitations from curiosity rather than approval now assessed Beaumont House with calculating eyes, mentally repositioning it as a desirable destination for the intellectual set. Literary gentlemen, who had previously avoided association with the scandalous nobleman, now engaged him in earnest conversation, drawn by rumors of his extensive collection and surprisingly incisive scholarly insights. Most telling was the reaction of the young aristocrat's formidable aunt, Lady Westmoreland, whose approval had seemed an impossible achievement. This author overheard her grudging acknowledgement to a companion that while the match might lack the financial advantages one might wish, at least the girl has sense enough to manage him and the library both, and heaven knows that's more than poor Caroline would have managed. One might observe that the path to their happiness had been unnecessarily complicated by society's strictures and personal fears. Yet this author would suggest that perhaps the very obstacles they overcame were necessary to forge a connection of genuine strength. Like a text carefully preserved through centuries of potential neglect, their love had emerged intact despite the particular corrosive power of London scandal. As twilight descended and guests departed, this author watched the future couple retreat toward the library's most secluded alcove, the nobleman's hand resting lightly at the small of his betrothed's back, her head inclined slightly toward him, as if continuing a conversation too absorbing to pause even for social niceties. Not the calculated withdrawal of a couple performing affection for social advantage, but the natural gravitation of two minds that had discovered in each other the particular sanctuary that comes only from being truly understood. And so, gentle listeners, another tale reaches its blessed conclusion. This author withdraws until our next encounter. Until then, remember, the greatest passions often kindle in the quietest hours, when pretense falls away and true selves emerge from shadow. Society will always have its judgments and expectations, but true connection speaks in shared insights, in mutual recognition, in minds that find in each other both challenge and completion. In the eternal battle between social convenience and intellectual communion, this author shall always favor the latter. Your devoted chronicler, Lady Ravenswood.